The night on planet Arvion was colder than usual, and the fog rolled in thick and heavy like a living thing. A lone human named Ethan Walker trudged down the uneven forest path, his boots sinking slightly into the damp soil. His scanner flickered uselessly in his hand, too much interference from the alien atmosphere. He sighed, pulling his jacket tighter. He had been sent here for simple resource mapping, not adventure. Yet the planet had a way of turning calm nights into mysteries. Just as he was about to stop and rest, a sound broke the silence, a faint cry. It wasn't a bird nor an animal he recognized. It was higher, trembling, and full of fear. A child's cry. Ethan froze. No one lived this deep in the Arvion woods, at least no humans. He turned slowly, eyes scanning through the thick fog, and called out softly, "Hello? Is someone there?" The cry came again, closer this time, from his left. Something about it tugged at him. Against his training to stay put, he moved toward the sound. The fog seemed to thicken, swirling around him, glowing faintly with bioluminescent particles that shimmered like stars. The trees loomed tall, their bark pulsing with slow green light. Every step he took echoed faintly, as though the forest itself was watching. He found a small hill half covered in moss and crystal flowers. Behind it, under the roots of a massive tree, he saw movement, a small shape huddled and shaking. Hey, it's okay," he said gently, crouching down. His flashlight revealed a small creature, a child, but clearly alien. The skin was pale blue, almost translucent, and its eyes were large and luminous, reflecting the light like mirrors. When the beam touched its face, the child gasped and curled up tighter, hiding under its thin arms. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ethan whispered. He turned off the light and moved slowly closer. "See? No light. No danger." The child peeked out, trembling, and then made a small sound like a question. Ethan didn't understand the language, but the tone was enough. Lost, alone, scared. He reached out his hand and placed it on the ground between them, palm up. After a few heartbeats, the child reached forward and touched his fingers lightly. Its hand was cold and fragile, but there was trust in that moment. "All right, little one," he said softly. "Let's get you somewhere safe." Ethan lifted the child carefully and wrapped his cloak around it. The creature was lighter than he expected, its heartbeat fast and fluttering. He started walking back toward his camp, keeping his steps steady. But as he walked, strange patterns began to appear on the fog, shapes of symbols glowing briefly, then fading away. He stopped and turned around. Nothing moved, only silence. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching. The child stirred in his arms, pointing toward the deeper part of the forest, mumbling words he couldn't understand. "Your home's that way?" Ethan asked. The child nodded faintly. He hesitated. His camp was behind him. Safety, communication, warmth. But the child wanted to go forward, into the unknown. He looked at the tiny, trembling figure in his arms and sighed. "All right, we'll do it your way." As they walked deeper, the air grew heavier, filled with glowing dust that shimmered around them like ghosts. Ethan heard faint whispers, like voices calling in an alien tongue. The child pressed closer against his chest. "It's okay," he said again, though his voice wasn't steady anymore. He crossed a shallow stream glowing with green light. The water rippled strangely when he stepped through it, sending waves of soft luminescence in every direction. Somewhere above, wings fluttered, huge silent wings. He dared not look up. When they reached the edge of a clearing, the fog began to thin. Ethan stopped, catching his breath. Across the open space, he saw figures, tall, cloaked shapes with glowing eyes half hidden behind the trees. They didn't move. They only watched. Ethan tightened his hold on the child and whispered, "It's all right. I'm not leaving you." The child made a soft, almost musical sound, something like Ethan. Hearing his own name in that alien voice made his heart skip. He glanced back at the silent watchers, then forward into the deeper woods. He didn't know where he was going or what waited ahead. But turning back no longer felt right. Somewhere beyond the fog, a strange destiny was waiting for him, and he had just taken the first step toward it. Ethan walked deeper into the forest, guided only by the faint glow from the strange moss beneath his boots. The fog had begun to thin, replaced by floating motes of blue light that drifted through the air like slow-moving fireflies. The child clung to him tightly, its small hands gripping his jacket as if afraid that the darkness might swallow them both. The forest around them was unlike anything he had ever seen. The trees were enormous, their roots twisted like stone serpents, their leaves glowing faintly from within. Sometimes the trunks emitted soft musical notes like the sound of glass humming in the wind. Ethan had seen alien landscapes before, but this one felt alive, watching, breathing, listening. He took each step carefully, scanning for movement. His old military instincts kicked in. Every rustle, every flicker of light could be danger. Almost there, he whispered, though he had no idea where there was. The child stirred slightly, pointing ahead. "You're home?" Ethan asked again. The child made a faint sound like a sigh. Then it rested its head against his shoulder and went quiet. As he walked, the forest floor grew uneven. Strange vines snaked across his path, some pulsing softly as though blood flowed inside them. He knelt once to examine one. It was warm. When he looked closer, the vine opened a tiny eye, then closed it again. Ethan jumped back, muttering, "Yeah, okay, definitely alive." He continued forward, moving slowly. The fog behind them shifted as if something large was moving within it. A faint clicking echoed in the distance like claws tapping against stone. Ethan's grip on the child tightened. "We're not alone," he whispered. The clicking grew louder. He turned off his light and crouched low behind a thick cluster of roots. Through the faint glow of the moss, he saw dark shapes moving between the trees. Tall, thin, and fast. He held his breath. The child shivered in his arms. "Shh, easy," he murmured. "We're okay." Then one of the shapes stopped. A pair of glowing orange eyes turned toward him. Ethan froze. The creature let out a low hiss, and for a long second, nothing moved. Then, just as suddenly, it vanished into the shadows again. Ethan waited for several minutes before standing. "We're leaving," he said softly, starting to move faster. The path ahead grew narrower, and strange blue fog began to curl around his legs. He could feel energy humming beneath the ground. Soon he reached a ravine. A broken wooden bridge stretched across it, half collapsed and covered in glowing fungus. On the other side, he could see faint lights, maybe torches, maybe something else. "Guess that's our way," he said under his breath. The child looked up at him with big, shining eyes and murmured something softly, almost like a warning. Ethan smiled tiredly. "Yeah, I know. It doesn't look safe, but we don't have much choice." He stepped onto the first plank. It creaked loudly. The second held, but when he reached the middle, one of the ropes snapped. The bridge swayed violently. Ethan held the child close and crouched, balancing himself. "Hang on!" Below them was a glowing abyss, filled with swirling fog and shimmering lights that looked like stars. For a moment he thought he heard voices, hundreds of whispers rising from the deep. Then, with a desperate breath, he leapt forward, landing hard on the other side. He lay there for a moment, breathing heavily, while the bridge behind him groaned and fell apart, the last rope snapping and vanishing into the fog below. The child touched his face gently, whispering something soft and grateful. Ethan smiled weakly. "You're welcome, kid." As he stood up again, something strange happened. The moss under his feet glowed brighter, like it was reacting to him. The light spread outward in a circle, forming faint lines and symbols across the ground. He looked down, confused. The symbols pulsed once, then disappeared. "What the hell was that?" he muttered. The child said something that sounded like a name, his name, but twisted in their language. "Ethan," it said softly. Ethan's heart skipped. He didn't know what this place was or what these signs meant, but he felt something changing. The air around him carried weight, like invisible eyes studying every choice he made. Ahead, a soft golden glow appeared, a trail winding deeper into the woods. The child tugged on his sleeve, pointing toward it. Ethan nodded and adjusted his grip. "All right, let's see where this leads." Behind them, the fog shifted again. The clicking returned, distant but steady. The hunters were still following. But Ethan didn't look back. He just kept walking toward the light, carrying the alien child through the living forest, unaware that each step was being recorded, judged, and remembered. He thought he was helping a lost child. He had no idea he had already entered the test. The forest had grown silent, too silent. Even the wind seemed afraid to move through the branches. Ethan's boots pressed softly into the glowing moss, every step echoing like a whisper in a cathedral. He could feel it now. Eyes, dozens of them, watching from the dark edges of the trees. The child in his arms stirred uneasily. Its little hands clutched at his jacket as a faint hum escaped its throat, a sound that trembled like fear. Ethan slowed down, scanning the tree line. "It's all right," he whispered, though his voice betrayed his own unease. "We're just passing through." But the silence that followed was wrong. Heavy. Waiting. Then came the first sound. A soft click-click, rhythmic and sharp, like claws tapping on stone. Ethan turned quickly but saw nothing. The light from the moss pulsed faintly beneath his boots, glowing brighter for a second before dimming again. The air felt charged, humming with strange energy. He kept walking, but now the sound was behind him, then ahead, then both sides. Something was circling them. The child let out a frightened chirp and buried its face in his chest. "Shh," he whispered. "Stay quiet." Out of the corner of his eye, a shape moved, tall, lean, and fast. Its eyes glowed faint orange in the mist. Ethan froze. Another one appeared to his left. Then another, crouched on a branch high above, staring down at him. There were at least 5 of them. Hunters. Ethan backed away slowly until he felt the solid wall of a tree behind him. "Easy now," he muttered under his breath. "I'm not looking for a fight." But the creatures didn't understand or didn't care. One stepped forward into the faint light. It was humanoid but stretched too tall, with thin limbs and a mask-like face covered in bone patterns. Its fingers ended in curved metallic claws. It tilted its head, studying him like a predator deciding where to strike. Ethan's hand slowly moved toward his belt. He didn't have much, just his utility knife and a small energy flare. He pulled the knife out silently, keeping it low. The first hunter hissed, and that was the signal. 2 of them lunged from the shadows, moving faster than he expected. Ethan dropped to one knee, rolling sideways just as a clawed hand slashed through the air where his head had been. He swung his knife in reflex, cutting through the hunter's side. The blade sparked against something hard. Armor? Bone? The creature screamed, the sound high-pitched and alien. "Stay down," Ethan shouted, pushing the child gently behind him. The second hunter leapt at him from behind, but he kicked backward, sending it crashing into a tree. The glow of the moss flared brighter with each strike, lighting up the clearing like a living battlefield. The injured hunter hissed and retreated, but 3 more moved in. Ethan could feel his pulse hammering in his chest. "Not tonight," he muttered, gripping the knife tighter. "I've come too far for this." He triggered the flare. A burst of brilliant white light filled the clearing, blinding the hunters. They shrieked, covering their eyes as smoke filled the air. Ethan grabbed the child and ran. Branches whipped at his face, the forest roaring around him. Behind, the hunters howled, their cries echoing through the fog. He could hear their claws scraping across the ground, gaining on him. He ran harder, lungs burning, until he saw a faint structure ahead, old stone pillars half buried in vines. A ruin. He stumbled inside, collapsing behind one of the pillars. The child was shaking in his arms, its glowing eyes wide with terror. Ethan pressed his back to the wall, trying to slow his breathing. "We're okay," he whispered. "We're safe for now." But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. Outside, he could see shapes moving between the trees. The hunters didn't enter. They circled, growling softly. One of them raised a long spear and carved a strange symbol into the dirt. 3 interlocking spirals glowing faint red, before retreating into the mist. Ethan stared at the mark. It pulsed once faintly, then faded. The child reached out and touched his arm, whispering a word that sent a chill down his spine. "Test." He looked down at the child. "What did you say?" The child only stared back, eyes glowing softly, and said again in its small, trembling voice, "Test." Ethan felt the air shift around them. The ruin walls began to hum, the symbols carved into the stone glowing faint gold. The hunters were gone, but something deeper had just awakened. He didn't understand what kind of test this was or who was watching, but one thing was certain. This forest wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to judge him. The fog began to thin as dawn touched the alien forest. Pale blue light spilled between the trees, turning the mist into rivers of color. Ethan blinked against it, his body aching from the night's escape. He had spent hours inside the ruined temple, waiting for the hunters' return. But they never came. Only the whispers remained, soft and strange, echoing from the ancient walls as if the stones were telling secrets. Now the forest was quiet again, but not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that came before something important. Ethan could feel it. The alien child still clung to his side, its small hand gripping his sleeve as they stepped out from the ruins. The ground shimmered faintly, and in the distance, through the last of the fog, Ethan saw it, something beautiful and impossible. A bridge made entirely of living light. Thousands of tiny glowing creatures, fireflies, or something like them, floated in the air, joining together in a soft golden arc that stretched across a deep chasm. Beneath it, a sea of mist rolled endlessly, swallowing all sound. Ethan stopped, his breath catching. "What is that?" The child whispered a word in its language, something melodic and low. The bridge pulsed once, reacting to the sound as if it understood. Ethan took a cautious step forward. The nearest fireflies drifted around his boots, forming a path beneath him. When his foot touched the first step of light, the entire bridge shimmered brighter, humming softly like a heartbeat. The child hesitated behind him, looking frightened. "Hey," Ethan said gently, crouching down. "It's okay. I'll go first." He extended his hand. The child stared for a long moment, then nodded and placed its small fingers in his palm. Together they stepped onto the bridge. At first it felt solid, like walking on warm glass. But halfway across, the light dimmed slightly. Ethan froze. Uh-oh. He looked down and saw the mist below swirling faster, almost as if it wanted to reach for them. "Don't look down," he murmured. The child tugged his hand and whispered something in a low, trembling voice. The bridge pulsed again, brighter this time. The fireflies seemed to respond directly to the child's words. Ethan realized with awe, they weren't crossing a bridge. The bridge was listening to them. He tried to step again, but the path ahead flickered. "No, no, no," he muttered. The child pointed at him urgently and said another word, louder this time, something that sounded like trust. Ethan took a deep breath. He didn't know what was happening, but every instinct told him that the bridge wanted more than weight. It wanted faith. So he closed his eyes, tightened his grip on the child's hand, and stepped forward. The fireflies blazed to life, thousands of lights rising and swirling around them in a magnificent storm of gold and silver. The air filled with soft chimes, and the mist below turned from gray to pale blue, revealing faint shapes, faces maybe, or spirits watching from below, step by step. They crossed until their feet touched solid ground again. When they turned back, the bridge dissolved silently into the air, the fireflies scattering like dust in the morning wind. Ethan knelt down, still catching his breath. "You saved us," he said softly, looking at the child. The little one smiled faintly, glowing eyes filled with quiet pride. But then something unexpected happened. A soft rumble echoed from the cliffs around them. The symbols on Ethan's wrist device, dead for hours, suddenly flickered to life. New markings appeared on the display, symbols matching those from the ruins. Then a line of alien script formed across the screen. He frowned, whispering the translation that appeared. "The path of heart is proven." "What?" he muttered, confused. He turned to the child, who now stood a few feet away, gazing toward the horizon. In the distance, tall tree-like towers rose high, their tops glowing with golden fire. It looked like a city, a village maybe. The child pointed toward it, saying a single word that Ethan didn't need to translate. "Home." He smiled tiredly. "Then that's where we're going." But as they started walking again, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, had been testing them on that bridge. The light, the symbols, the whispers in the mist. All of it felt too deliberate. He thought he was guiding a lost child home. But maybe it was the child guiding him. And somewhere, hidden deep in the forest shadows, golden eyes watched their every step, silent judges marking his progress through the trial of worth. When Ethan and the alien child emerged from the glowing forest, the world ahead looked like something from a dream. The trees gave way to massive roots that twisted into bridges, platforms, and homes, a living city suspended in the air. The village shimmered with pale golden light, and every surface pulsed gently, as if it shared a heartbeat with the land itself. Ethan stopped on the hill's edge, staring in disbelief. "You live here?" he asked softly. The child nodded, eyes glinting in the sunlight. Alien figures began to appear among the bridges, tall, graceful beings with markings across their skin like living tattoos. They watched him silently as he carried the small child toward them. No one spoke. No one moved. The air was heavy, thick with something between awe and suspicion. The child tugged on Ethan's jacket, motioning for him to follow. Together, they stepped across a glowing bridge that curved toward the heart of the village. The structure felt warm beneath his boots, almost alive. Every few steps he caught whispers in the alien tongue, short, clipped sounds that carried the same rhythm as the forest's strange hum. As they reached the central platform, Ethan saw her, a tall alien woman with silver-white skin, her presence calm but commanding. Her eyes were the same deep blue as the child's. She stepped forward, her long robe flowing like liquid light. The child broke free from Ethan's arms and ran to her, calling out joyfully. The woman dropped to her knees and embraced the little one tightly. Ethan smiled. For a moment it felt like a happy ending. He had done what was right, returned the lost child home. He turned to leave quietly, but a low, rhythmic sound stopped him. Boom, 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 drums. Hundreds of aliens stepped out from the shadows, forming a wide circle around the platform. Their eyes glowed faintly as they began to chant in deep, harmonic voices. The sound vibrated through the air, through the wood, through his chest. The leader rose, still holding the child, and fixed her gaze on Ethan. "You have crossed the trials," she said. Her voice was soft but resonant, and to his surprise the words came out in perfect English. "The forest spoke your worth. The bridge revealed your heart." Ethan blinked. "Wait, what?" "I was just trying to help the kid." The crowd's chant grew louder. Lights spread from the ground, tracing intricate golden symbols around his feet. The air shimmered with energy. The woman continued, her eyes shining brighter. "You have shown courage in darkness, compassion in fear. You carry no greed, no hatred. Such a spirit has not been seen among us for many generations." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his neck. "Hold on, I think there's a mistake. I'm not whatever you think I am." The child stepped forward and touched his hand gently, smiling. "Chosen," it whispered. The crowd fell completely silent. Then, as if obeying some ancient signal, they all knelt. Ethan took a step back, confused. No, get up, please. I'm not a leader. I'm just a guy who got lost in the woods." The alien woman approached him, her expression soft but unreadable. She placed her hand on his shoulder. This was not chance. The forest watches, the hunters, the bridge, the path, they were part of the old ways, a test to find one worthy to guide our people. He shook his head. I'm human. I don't even understand your world. Yet you acted as one of us would hope to," she said calmly. "Not for power, not for reward, but for the innocent." Ethan looked around helplessly as the chanting resumed. The drums thundered, and the golden light beneath his feet grew so bright that it painted the air with spiraling patterns. The energy pulsed, matching his heartbeat. He stared down at the small child, the one he thought he'd saved. The one who now looked at him not as a helpless kid, but as something else entirely. "Was this all a test?" he whispered. The child nodded once. "Test of heart," it said. "You passed." Before he could respond, the light rose around him like a wave, wrapping him in warmth. The villagers' voices grew into a song, beautiful, strange, and powerful. And as the music filled the air, Ethan finally understood. The lost child hadn't needed saving. He had. The air shimmered like heat above desert sand. Ethan stood frozen in the middle of the glowing platform, surrounded by hundreds of alien villagers kneeling in reverent silence. The golden light beneath his feet pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, slow, alive. He could feel it traveling up through his boots into his chest, synchronizing with his own pulse. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't want to. "I didn't come here for this," he said under his breath. His voice echoed strangely, carried by invisible vibrations in the air. "I'm just a man who found a lost kid." The tall alien woman, the one who seemed to lead the tribe, took a step forward. Her robe shimmered like molten glass. "No one finds the child," she said calmly. "The child finds them." Ethan frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She didn't answer with words. Instead, she lifted her hand and pressed her palm to the platform. Instantly, the glowing circle beneath Ethan expanded outward, forming intricate rings of light and symbols around him. The air trembled. The sky above began to darken, as if the sun itself was dimming in respect. The villagers began to chant again, low, rhythmic, like a heartbeat that matched the light under his feet. Ethan swallowed hard. Look, I don't know your customs. I don't want to disrespect them, but you've got the wrong guy. The woman's silver eyes locked onto his. Do you walk away from what is right? He opened his mouth, but the words caught. Every memory, his lonely years wandering alien outposts, the guilt of missions gone wrong, the faces he couldn't save, flashed through his mind. No, he said quietly. I don't. The woman nodded once. Then prove your heart. The ground shook. From the edge of the platform, 3 figures emerged. Massive alien warriors wearing bone armor, their eyes burning bright white. Each carried a staff shaped like a curved blade glowing faintly at the tip. They circled Ethan, moving slowly, deliberately, their steps in rhythm with the chant. The leader raised her hand. The trial of worthiness begins. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but the villager's eyes held him in place. He glanced at the child, who now stood beside the woman, watching him silently. The child didn't look afraid. Instead, its eyes glowed brighter, as if expecting him to fight. Fantastic, Ethan muttered. A test, great. The first warrior attacked, fast and fierce. Ethan barely dodged the sweeping blade, feeling the air cut past his neck. He rolled aside, grabbed a loose staff from the ground and swung it instinctively. The impact echoed like thunder. Sparks of light burst where the weapons met. The villagers gasped, but no one intervened. The second warrior stepped in, striking low. Ethan blocked with both hands, his arms trembling from the force. The staff vibrated, heat running through it like fire. His knees buckled, but he refused to fall. He wasn't fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for meaning. The third warrior swung high, fast as lightning. Ethan dropped his weapon and used his body instead, ducking under the blow and shoving the warrior backward with all his strength. The alien stumbled, its blade clattering across the platform. The chanting grew louder, faster, the rhythm matching the storm in Ethan's chest. Then the warriors stopped. They bowed their heads, placing their staffs on the ground. The leader raised both hands. The heart is tested, she said softly. Strength alone cannot lead. Mercy must guide it. Ethan looked down at the fallen warriors. None were dead, just disarmed. He had held back each time, striking to survive but never to kill. The realization struck him hard. They had been watching for that. The light beneath his feet flared one final time, turning pure white. The villagers bowed as one. The child walked toward him slowly, carrying something glowing in its small hands. A crown made of woven vines and silver light. Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. No, you don't understand. I can't lead you. The child looked up at him, smiling faintly. You already do. When the crown touched his head, the forest responded. The trees pulsed with light. The sky broke open, revealing a sea of stars swirling like rivers above them. The platform itself began to hum, alive with energy that felt both strange and familiar. Ethan's heart pounded. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. The forest had accepted him. He looked up, eyes wide, as the leader bowed deeply before him. Ethan Walker, she said, voice echoing like wind through crystal. From this day forward, the heart of two worlds beats as one. He had passed the trial, not because he was strong, but because he cared. And somewhere deep inside, for the first time in years, Ethan believed that maybe he had finally found home. The stars above the alien village shimmered brighter than ever before, as if the entire sky was celebrating. The drums had fallen silent, replaced by the sound of the wind weaving softly through glowing trees. Ethan stood in the center of the great platform, the faintly glowing crown still resting on his head. He felt its warmth, not heavy like metal, but alive, pulsing gently like it was breathing with him. The aliens around him remained kneeling, silent and reverent. The tall leader who had once spoken for them bowed her head deeply. The forest has chosen, she said. The trial is complete. The new chieftain stands before us. Ethan shook his head slowly, voice unsteady. No, I'm not your leader. I'm just a traveler. I can't even speak your language. The leader smiled faintly. And yet you speak the one that matters most. He frowned. Which one is that? She pointed to her chest. The language of heart. The words settled in the air like a soft echo. The child, the same one he had carried through fog and fear, stepped closer. Its glowing eyes held both innocence and something older, something wise. It reached for his hand and placed it against its small chest. He could feel its heartbeat steady and calm. Then the child pressed its hand against his chest where his own heart beat in the same rhythm. The same, it whispered. Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. You're saying, we're not so different. The child nodded, smiling. The villagers rose slowly. One by one they approached and touched the ground before him, not out of worship but respect. Ethan looked around helplessly, overwhelmed. He'd never asked for this. He'd just done what he thought was right, helped a frightened child. Yet somehow that one act had rewritten the destiny of an entire people. The leader gestured for him to follow her. Together with the child they walked through the village. The trees above bent slightly as they passed, glowing brighter as if acknowledging their new guardian. Bridges of light connected every home. Children peeked out from behind crystal doors, whispering excitedly. At the village's highest point stood an enormous tree with branches that reached the clouds. Its trunk was wide enough to hold a small city. The leader motioned toward it. This is the Heartwood, she said. Every chieftain before you has stood beneath its roots. It listens to the chosen. Ethan hesitated but stepped closer. The air near the Heartwood vibrated softly, carrying a deep, ancient sound, almost like a heartbeat. He reached out and placed his palm on the bark. Instantly, visions filled his mind. He saw the forest alive, every creature, every plant, every glowing root connected through threads of light. He saw memories of past chieftains, aliens, warriors, healers, teachers, all chosen not for power but compassion. Then he saw his own journey, the fog, the hunters, the bridge, the child, and understood. The forest had been watching all along, testing him, waiting for a heart pure enough to bridge two worlds. When he opened his eyes, the leader and child were still beside him. Do you see? She asked quietly. Yes, Ethan said softly. You weren't looking for a warrior. You were looking for someone who remembered how to care. The leader nodded. Our strength has long been our weakness. We forgot kindness in our search for survival. The forest remembered. Ethan looked around at the faces watching him, the villagers, the children, the hunters who once chased him. They now stood with their weapons lowered, peaceful and humble. He felt a strange calm settle over him. I can't promise to be perfect, he said slowly, but I'll try to be what you need. The leader smiled. Then you already are. That night, as the stars reflected off the glowing canopy, Ethan stood at the edge of the village. The child sat beside him, head resting on his arm. In the distance, the mist that once frightened him now glowed softly, peaceful. He looked up at the endless alien sky and whispered to himself, Funny, I thought I was lost. The child looked up at him, sleepy-eyed, and replied, You were never lost. You were being found. Ethan smiled faintly, feeling something in his heart he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. The human who once wandered between worlds had finally become the bridge between them. And on that distant planet beneath silver leaves and golden stars, the forest whispered one truth across the ages. Sometimes leadership isn't chosen by blood or strength. It's chosen by kindness.